The clock is ticking for Robert Roberson, the East Texas man who is facing the death penalty once again after claiming his innocence for 20 years. A Smith County judge set a new date for his execution after it was put on hold in October of last year. This case has drawn national attention with junk science at the forefront of his conviction. CBS 19's Jesus Martinez was in the court this morning and has the emotional reaction from his attorney.
Coming into this hearing, we didn't know if or when we would get a new execution date for Robert Roberson. His last scheduled execution was put on hold, thanks in part due to injunctions, state representatives, and advocates all stepping in. But now, today, it only took the judge less than 30 minutes to make that decision. The judge noted that the Court of Criminal Appeals has not ruled on Roberson's latest appeal, which has been pending for 5 months now. Roberson's attorney argued there's no reason to set an execution date while he still has that active appeal going on like many others who are on death row. Still, the state pushed for a new execution about 90 days out, calling it reasonable.
We're not going to stop fighting for Robert. He cannot give up hope. They arrest the man based on this shaken baby syndrome diagnosis that has been completely discredited, even by those who still believe it's a thing. The clock starts ticking on things like the ability to apply for executive clemency.
I was able to speak to family members, both in support and opposed to his new death penalty. Supporters of him say they still hold out hope, but those that don't say the courts have spoken. As of right now, Roberson's execution is set for October 16th at 6 p.m. in Huntsville. And something interesting to note about this new execution date for Robert Roberson is that it's almost to the date from last year's scheduled execution date that was put on hold. Again, his attorney saying that she will continue to fight for his justice and for more evidence to be heard. For now in Anderson County, I'm Jesus Martinez. Back to you.
Jesus, thank you. To help us unpack the significance of this decision and what it can mean moving forward, we're joined now by Dr. John Barrett, a political science professor at LaTourneau University. Dr. Barrett, thanks for joining us. First, I want to get to what's your reaction to the judge's decision to move forward with setting the execution date?
Well, in these types of trials, there's, almost by requirement, a lot of wrangling that goes on. But then as you move along in the process, the opportunities to significantly change it gets more and more challenging. And so here you're seeing the process just kind of lumber along. And of course, there's still some more legal wrangling to go. But it's just kind of the next step in the process.
And we've seen it before, Dr. Barrett being, delayed. Do you think this execution could be stopped, delayed, or at this point? And if so, how?
Well, it's possible, but the challenge here is the appeals process is actually very restrictive. And there's a lot of debate in public over shaken baby syndrome and additional evidence and all of this, but the courts largely don't consider any of that. What they do is they go back and they look at, all the way back to the original trial of what was presented, there, and they kind of use that as their starting point. And so legally, the courts will look at a much narrower range of considerations than a lot of the things that are being discussed in public.
What does this tell us about the state's views of this case, despite the lingering medical controversy?
Well, again, this is a symptom of many of the challenges in the judicial system. On the one hand, you have, I think, the indigent defense, right? If you can't afford an attorney, the court appoints an attorney for you to, provide your defense. But those defense attorneys are generally overwhelmed with a lot of cases, and they can't, they don't have the resources to really invest a lot of time. And so that's a question that lingers here, is if the defense team had originally, been able to explore some of these other things. They didn't initially contest the accusation of shaken baby syndrome. And so that right there kind of sets the whole trial on a particular footing. And then again, these challenges of not being able to consider a wider range of other exculpatory evidence, things that might prove someone's innocence. These are all just challenges inherent to the judicial system.
And Dr. Barrett, I've got $1 million question for you. What are the most likely scenarios between now and October 16th?
Well, certainly we'll have some more decisions that get made. We'll see what happens with the appeal that's currently, before the appellate court. And then we just kind of have to wait and see after that, but the clock is unfortunately ticking.
All righty, Dr. John Barrett, thank you for your insight.